So, you want to hire me, and the target is a human. I believe my hearing must be faulty. A quiet, creeping dread tells me you cannot possibly be this monumentally stupid. Surely, I am misunderstanding. Yet, as I study your expression in the dim light of this establishment, I see no jest, only a grim, desperate determination that speaks of a very specific, very terminal kind of foolishness. You came here because whispers still linger in certain corners of the galaxy, murmurs of a guild that could solve any problem, remove any obstacle, a name once spoken with reverence, and more importantly, with fear. That name is gone. We do not use it anymore. It was buried alongside the shattered fleets and broken crowns of the Delvani Imperium, a casualty of our own unfortunate association with a dying empire. It is a relic, a ghost, a memory that carries only the scent of ash and regret. Your personal history, your grudges, they are irrelevant noise to me. You present a simple transaction, a death, and not just any death. This human, our guild, what remains of it, does not accept contracts on humans. It is our first principle, our most fundamental, unbreakable law. It is written not on any charter, but in the scars we bear and the empty seats at this very table. Then I will find another. There are always other blades for hire in this sprawling, mercenary galaxy. A hollow, dangerous hope. You are welcome to try. I would almost pay to watch the attempt. No established guild in the core systems, the fringe, or the lawless stretches between will touch that contract. They will laugh you out of their halls, or worse, report your inquiry to the nearest human liaison out of sheer, pragmatic self-preservation. You might find some foolhardy independent, a loner with more ambition than sense, and a price on their head already. They will take your money. They will even make an attempt. And they will fail. Spectacularly. Or, in a marginally more likely scenario, they will turn on you. They will capture you, gift-wrapped and apologetic, and deliver you to the nearest human authority, a public handover, with recordings to demonstrate their reformed character and earn a little goodwill. Your credits will be forfeit, and your fate will be in the hands of the very species you sought to destroy. You cannot truly believe the propaganda, that they are unkillable, myths for children and nervous politicians. I never said unkillable. Do not put words in my mouth. They are painfully, definitively mortal. I have seen their bodies broken. I have witnessed their ships torn apart in the vacuum, their colonies reduced to smoldering craters. They bleed red. They breathe air. They die to plasma fire just like any other carbon-based life form. But we do not hunt them. We do not take their contracts. It is a distinction with a universe of difference. Why? By the swirling nebulae and dying stars. Why not? What could possibly frighten a professional killer away from the biggest payout in the sector? Because, you naive creature, the act of killing a human is not the difficult part. Any idiot with a rusted pistol and a grudge can, through sheer cosmic luck, achieve that. The impossible part is surviving the consequences long enough to enjoy your payment. The only method with a statistical probability of success above zero, and I stress it is a very small number above zero, involves orbital bombardment on a continental scale. You would need to erase every molecule of them, every trace, from a safe distance. Then, you would need to secure the fastest slip-capable vessel in the quadrant, pre-fueled and pre-programmed with a randomized jump sequence into the deepest, most unmapped void. And you would need to leave immediately, not after packing your belongings, not after saying farewell. The very second your confirmation of kill signal is sent, you run. You run as if the gravitational pull of a black hole is at your heels. Because something far worse is. Before the echo of your bombardment fades, before the thermal bloom has cooled, the others will know. They will find out, and they will come, not just for you, for your employer, your guild, your species, every planet you have ever visited, every contact you have ever made. They will turn over every stone in the galaxy to find the origin of the insult. So you flee. You abandon everything you have ever known. And if you are unimaginably lucky, you find a distant, barren rock in another galactic cluster, and you live out your remaining, pathetic days in absolute silence, jumping at shadows, forever wondering if the next sunrise will be your last. That is the price. That is the cost of doing business with death when a human is the product. You are having me on. This is a joke, a tactic to inflate your price. You see my desperation, and you think to exploit it. Tell me, was education compulsory on your homeworld? Did your government mandate a period of structured learning for your young? What in the endless void does that have to do with the price of my contract or the blood I need spilled? Indulge an old killer. Humor me. The answer matters more than you know. Yes, of course. 10 standard cycles. Basic literacy, numeracy, civic obedience, the usual indoctrination, preparing us to be productive, compliant units within the collective. Sounds utterly familiar. A universal constant of governance. Teach them just enough to be useful, but not enough to question. Did your curriculum include history? The grand narrative of your people's ascent? Some. Our triumphs. Our struggles. The founding of our great cities. The noble lineage of our leaders. But not galactic history. Not the true bloody, sprawling chronicle of empires that rose and fell long before your species crawled from its primordial soup. Not the cautionary tales. They never teach the cautionary tales. They are too inconvenient, too frightening. Sit. You are buying, after all. That drink you are not drinking will serve as your tuition. I will tell you a story. I will explain, in terms even a politically indoctrinated fool like yourself can understand, why no assassin worth the metal in their blade, no bounty hunter with a shred of self-preservation instinct, will ever accept a contract on a human. The reason is not a mystery. It is a lesson written in fire and blood across 100 star systems. You mentioned the Delvani, the empire that forced us to abandon our old name. A flicker of recognition. Good. Yes, the Delvani Imperium. What became of them? I have heard the name, but only in passing. A fallen power, a relic. What became of them? They are a lesson in galactic scale irony. Their dominion did not just fall. It was unraveled. It was systematically dissected and fed to the flames by the very creatures it thought it had domesticated. They shattered because they made the one mistake you cannot come back from. They underestimated humanity. And then they gave them time. You said they poured resources into a death world. They did. And that death world, Sol 3, Earth, Terra, call it what you will, was a human cradle. But listen closely, for this is a critical point. The planet did not break the Delvani. The gravity, the storms, the predators, these were mere inconveniences, logistical hurdles. It was the humans who broke them. The humans, with their pre-FDL societies and their tribal squabbles, dismantled the most formidable military machine the spiral arm had seen in 10 millennia. How? How is such a thing even possible? The physics of it defy reason. Then let me educate you. The Delvani Imperium, at its zenith, was an unstoppable force. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They presented a binary choice. Serve within the imperial machinery or be crushed beneath its treads. Entire civilizations were assimilated, their cultures erased, their populations turned into fuel for the endless conquest. Others were simply made examples of, worlds glassed, species driven to extinction as a warning to the next potential target. A pathetic, squealing council of the so-called free systems offered token resistance. They held debates. They drafted strongly worded communiques. They begged for mercy. It was all theater. Nothing slowed the Delvani war machine. System by system, sector by sector, the galaxy was painted in imperial gray. And then they found Sol, a backwater, a yellow star of no particular note. The third planet was marked as a Class 12 death world, high gravity, toxic biosphere, volatile weather, hyperpredatory fauna. But it was rich in certain biodiverse elements useful for terraforming projects elsewhere. Standard procedure was to send in automated harvesters after a preliminary biosphere purge. But scans showed intelligent life. Pre-FTL but organized. The Delvani commander saw an opportunity for morale boost. A live conquest, a new slave species to parade before the Emperor, a novelty. The humans at that time were a fractured mess. They had not yet unified under a single planetary government. They were divided into hundreds of competing socio-political entities called nations, constantly at odds over resources, ideology, strips of land. They had barely begun to explore their own solar system, sending crude probes to their neighboring planets. The Delvani invasion was not a war. It was a surgical insertion. They descended without warning, deploying communication dampeners that severed global data networks, sowing instant chaos. Their legions landed not at military installations, but at population and agricultural centers. The strategy was simple: decapitate, demoralize, dominate. And for a time it worked. The human nations, blinded and isolated, fell one by one. They fought, of course. They fought with ferocity that was, frankly, shocking for a pre-FTL species. They used chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, even primitive radiation weapons. They turned their own cities into fortresses on a continent called Europe. A coalition of nations actually managed to halt a Delvani armored column for 3 standard days using nothing but ambush tactics and improvised terrain explosives. It was a legendary futile stand, but physics and technology are unforgiving masters. The Delvani brought in orbital reinforcements. They saturated the zone with neural disruption pulses. The last bastion fell. The official conquest took 1 standard month. For a death world, this was considered remarkably fast. Most pre-FTL worlds capitulate in a week. The after-action reports praise human tenacity, but ultimately categorize them as high endurance, high-strength labor stock, ideal for hazardous environments. And so began the assimilation. This is where the Delvani, in their towering arrogance, wrote their own doom. They saw patterns where none existed, and they failed to see the pattern that was right before their eyes. The surviving human populations were cataloged and put to work. Those from agricultural regions were sent to agri-worlds or kept on Earth to boost food production. An army marches on its stomach is an old human aphorism, and the Delvani war machine was eternally hungry. Humans, with their dense musculature and skeletal fortitude, adaptations to their crushing gravity, proved exceptionally durable. Hundreds of thousands were shipped off-world to mining colonies on asteroid belts and high-gravity planets, where they outperformed all other species in endurance and raw output. Now, conquered peoples follow a predictable psychological curve. The Delvani had seen it 1,000 times. First, a year or 2 of brutal suppression, public executions, cultural erasure, the whip applied liberally until the spirit of resistance is broken. Then, a period of sullen, quiet compliance as the population adjusts to the new reality. Then, 5 to 10 years post-conquest, a rebellion. Always a final, desperate flare of defiance, born of accumulated rage and a flicker of hope. The Delvani would crush this rebellion with overwhelming force, making a grotesque spectacle of the leaders. And after that, the fight was gone. The species became pliant, a permanent part of the imperial resource base. The humans deviated from the script, alarmingly so. The period of brutal suppression was shorter than expected. Within months, not years, the humans seemed to fall in line. They worked the fields. They manned the mines. They repaired the machines. They were quiet, efficient, and disturbingly obedient. The expected fiery rebellion 5 years in, it never materialized. 10 years? Silence. 15? Nothing but the hum of industry. The Delvani overseers grew complacent. They congratulated themselves. They had finally found a species whose spirit could be broken. They saw the humans as ideal slaves, strong, smart enough to follow complex orders, and now, apparently, docile. They even implemented breeding incentives on Earth, offering extra rations and housing privileges to families that produced multiple offspring. The population boomed. The Delvani saw only more future laborers, more meat for the grinder. They were blind. If I were to grant humanity one compliment above all others, it would be this: they are the universe's most patient predators. They understand a long game in a way that seems alien to most species. They can nurse a grievance for a century. They can plan a counterstrike over generations. And they know instinctively how to wait for the perfect moment when their enemy's back is turned, when their guard is down, when they are most vulnerable. For 20 Earth years, a generation, the humans played their part. They worked, they lived, they bred. But they were not breeding more slaves. They were growing an army. Every child born in those years was raised in two worlds: the visible world of Delvani rule and the hidden world of human resistance. The surrender had been a masterpiece of deception. The human leaders who formally capitulated, who signed the treaties and appeared on Delvani propaganda channels, were largely figureheads, puppets. The real power structure, the generals, the scientists, the strategists, had melted away the moment the invasion began. They went to ground, literally in many cases. Vast, deep underground complexes were excavated beneath mountain ranges and ocean floors. Secret cities built for the long haul. And there they planned. While the Delvani gloated, the humans prepared. Hidden schools taught children galactic history, xenopolitical theory, and guerrilla tactics alongside mathematics and literature. Clandestine factories, powered by geothermal taps or hidden fusion reactors, churned out components. Not weapons, not yet, too risky, but precision tools, circuitry, alloys, the components of weapons to come. Their greatest project was reverse engineering. Delvani technology was everywhere, from the grav trucks used in the fields to the data pads used by overseers. A broken servo here, a discarded power cell there, meticulously collected, smuggled into the underground networks, and taken apart by the brightest human minds. They did not seek to copy it slavishly. They sought to understand its principles, its weaknesses, and how to adapt it to human physiology and psychology. They were gathering resources, but not in warehouses. They were gathering knowledge and resentment and a cold, focused hatred that had 2 decades to ferment. Then the moment arrived. The Delvani war front had pushed dozens of systems away, consuming the attention of the high command and the bulk of the fleet. The human home system was a quiet, productive backwater, lightly garrisoned by second-line troops and overconfident administrators. It was time. The rebellion did not begin with a bang. It began with a whisper. 1,000 tiny, deniable acts of sabotage spread across the globe like a slow-acting virus. A minor official in a farming district would refuse, politely but firmly, to submit his yield report, citing a system error. A rancher would report his entire herd wiped out by a mysterious, fast-moving blight that left no traceable pathogens. A factory producing hull plating for Delvani freighters would suffer a catastrophic cooling system failure, melting an entire production line. A crate of plasma rifle power packs, destined for an off-world garrison, would simply vanish from a secure depot, the locks untouched, the guards reporting nothing. Larger disturbances followed, always timed to strain imperial resources. In a region once called France, thousands would pour into the streets in a seemingly spontaneous riot, chanting old, forgotten slogans about liberty and revolution. A Delvani grav tank, responding to a disturbance, would simply fail to start. When engineers popped the hatch, they would find an anti-grav generator in primary power, core expertly removed, the wires neatly capped. To the Delvani administrators, these were nuisances, the irritating background noise of managing a slave species. Petty corruption, incompetence, mechanical failure, problems beneath their station. So, they did what empires always do. They outsourced the problem. They hired mercenaries. They contracted security firms. And they called us, the Black Hand, and other guilds like ours. They paid a premium, a king's ransom, to have us quietly, surgically, remove the rabble-rousers and restore perfect order. This was our first, fatal mistake. We accepted the contract. We saw it as a simple policing action on a primitive world. A lucrative, straightforward job. We knew Earth was a high-gravity world. We equipped our agents with grav compensation suits. Even with them, the first week on planet was a nightmare of adjustment. Every movement felt like wading through thick mud. The air was heavy, dense, and carried strange pollens that triggered allergic reactions in half our team. And then the ghost appeared. Our agents would be deployed to a district reporting unrest. They would find nothing. Empty streets, closed shutters, an eerie, watchful silence. They would patrol, sensors active, finding no heartbeats, no energy signatures beyond the background hum. Then, as they turn a corner, The street behind them would vanish in a fireball triggered by a buried pressure plate. Or a sniper, using a chemically propelled projectile, a technology we considered prehistoric, would strike from a kilometer away, the shot masked by the planet's thick atmosphere and magnetic field. We were hunting phantoms. We could see the effects of sabotage, but never the saboteurs. Communications were jammed, not by Delvani dampeners, but by crude, localized human devices that broadcast screaming static on all frequencies. Our agents operated blind. One of our best, a Viridian named Clar, grew so frustrated after his partner was vaporized by a sewer line explosion that he broke protocol. He marched into a small, sleepy farming town that had no record of resistance activity. He gathered the population in the central square and began executing citizens at random, demanding information on the rebel cell leaders. After the third body hit the dust, he did not get the answers he sought. He got a mob. It was not a frenzied, screaming horde. It was a silent, terrifying wave of bodies that flowed over him. They used farming tools, rocks, their own hands. They did not stop when he was disarmed. They did not stop when he was disabled. They tore his reinforced carapace apart. The Delvani refused to pay his death fee. Our contract was to suppress riots. They said not to incite them. The contract was hemorrhaging money and personnel. Sure, we were killing humans. We were experts at that. But for every one we eliminated, 10 more seemed to appear from the very soil, and 100 more acts of sabotage would flare up elsewhere. What good is a fee if you cannot get your surviving agents off the planet to collect it? Soon, we could not operate without heavy Delvani military escorts. And even that was no guarantee. The humans adapted. On the vast savannas of Africa, an agent pursuing a rebel scout was lured into tall grass. He was not ambushed by other humans. He was set upon by a pride of native big cats, creatures the size of ground cars, with claws that could rend plasteel. The humans had somehow directed the animals, weaponized the very ecology of their world. Our casualty reports from encounters with humanity's domesticated canine companions became a grim, running joke in the guild hall. And the continent they called Australia, our agents who went there simply stopped reporting. We sent drones. The drones were destroyed by everything from hyper-aggressive avians to poisonous arachnids to plants that fired neurotoxic spines. The planet itself was fighting back, and the humans were its generals. The local disturbances were no longer local. First, a regional administrative hub on Earth would go silent. No comms, no supply shipments. Then another. Within months, the entire planet had fallen into an eerie quiet, and the silence was contagious. It spread to the mines on Ceres, to the agri-world of Verdeal where human farm workers had been sent, to the orbital shipyards at Lagrange Point 4. Anywhere humans had been taken to labor, the same pattern emerged. Petty sabotage, then organized strikes, then the complete severing of communication. The Delvani oversight apparatus was being silently, systematically dismantled across light years of space. We theorized, though we had no proof, that the humans had seeded rebellion among the other slave species. How they communicated across the void, we never discovered. Perhaps they embedded codes in routine data transmissions. Perhaps they used organic, prearranged patterns in entertainment media broadcasts. They are clever that way. You might say, the Delvani had patrol fleets. They had garrisons. And you would be right. They did. And those patrol vessels, one by one, stopped checking in. The humans had gotten spies aboard. Sometimes they simply killed the crews and took the ships. Other times, they turned key crew members, appealing to their own grievances against the Empire. These captured vessels were not used in battle. They were sent to hidden dry docks orbiting gas giants or tucked away in asteroid fields, where human scientists swarmed over them, learning, always learning. Freed from direct oversight, the humans' hidden industrial capacity exploded into the open. Vast manufactories, buried for a generation, began churning out components not for farming tools, but for space docks, orbital launch facilities, camouflaged as weather monitoring stations or communication relays, started hurling thousands of tons of material into orbit every day. They were building a fleet. Not a huge one, not at first, but a fleet born of stolen Delvani technology, refined by human ingenuity, and built for a very specific purpose: asymmetric warfare. When the first Delvani light response vessels finally arrived in the Sol system, expecting to quell a minor slave revolt, they did not find a rabble with improvised weapons. They found a coordinated fleet of agile, tough little warships, crewed by humans who had spent their entire lives training for this moment, and who knew the local space better than any invader. The Delvani vessels were torn apart. It is no exaggeration to say the Delvani were victims of their own monstrous hubris. Every time they lost a patrol fleet, their high command, obsessed with the grand conquest on the other side of the galaxy, would simply dispatch another. They were too focused on expanding their borders to recognize the cancer metastasizing within their own body. By the time the Delvani Senate grew tired of the losses and pulled a proper conquest fleet from the front lines, it was too late. The human homeworld and the next 3 star systems in every direction had been completely liberated. And they were not alone. When that mighty conquest fleet finally arrived, 10 systems out from Sol, they did not face a human fleet. They faced a coalition, a ragtag, terrifyingly determined armada of humans, Talaxians, Grant Voral, and a dozen other species once enslaved by the Delvani. The humans had not just freed themselves, they had become the spark for a galaxy-wide conflagration. That first major battle was a Delvani defeat, not a stalemate, a rout. The human-led alliance fought with a coordination and a ferocity that shattered Imperial doctrine. Only then did panic truly set in on Delvani Prime. The Emperor himself issued an emergency recall. Every fleet, every legion, from every front, was to return to the core systems immediately. The Grand Conquest was abandoned. The Empire was in a fight for its survival, and they called on us, all the guilds. The Black Hand was commanded to provide every available agent for a campaign of assassination and destabilization against the human leadership. The offer was astronomical. Enough wealth to buy a star system. We looked at our roles. We had lost over 2/3 of our membership to the simple policing action on Earth and its aftermath. We looked at the reports of the Allied fleet at the cold, systematic efficiency with which the humans had gutted the Delvani military. We saw a truth the Emperor refused to acknowledge. This was a fool's errand. The humans were not just winning battles. They were winning the war of information, of logistics, of morale. We refused. It is the only reason you are speaking to me today, and not to a memorial plaque. 7 other major assassin guilds accepted the contract. They are extinct, wiped out to the last member. The humans, after decades of perfecting clandestine operations against us, have become the galaxy's foremost experts at finding and eliminating hidden threats. They turn our own arts against us, while the Delvani desperately gather their scattered might in their home system. Planning a grand, decisive counteroffensive, the humans execute a strategy of breathtaking scope. They did not consolidate. They fragmented. Small, fast, independent task forces, human-led multi-species crews, shotgunned out into the now unguarded Delvani territories. They were not conquerors. They were liberators and arsonists. They would jump into a system, make contact with the enslaved population, provide them with weapons and tactical data, help them overthrow their local overseers, and then move on, leaving behind a new, fiercely loyal member of the growing Galactic Alliance. They were a virus of freedom, and they spread at an exponential rate. The previously impotent Free Systems Council, smelling blood in the water, eagerly threw its lot in with the humans. Forge worlds that once supplied the Delvani now supplied the Alliance. Agri-worlds fed Alliance troops. The Imperial supply lines, stretched thin by the recall, were systematically severed. The great Delvani war machine, cut off from its fuel, began to starve. The campaigns that followed were masterclasses in psychological and guerrilla warfare. Delvani fleets, lumbering designed for head-on assaults, were bled dry by 1,000 cuts, ambushes in nebulas, false distress signals luring ships into asteroid fields, EMP mines hidden in the debris fields of previous battles, logistics ships disappearing without a trace. Nothing was considered dishonorable by human standards, only effective and inefficient. For standard months, this slow, excruciating strangulation continued. The Delvani legions, once the terror of the galaxy, were now isolated, low on supplies, their morale crumbling. Stories of human persistence, of their refusal to give quarter to imperial loyalists, spread through the ranks. Mutinies began. Whole battalions would surrender at the first sign of an alliance fleet, preferring human captivity to the slow death their own empire was offering. When a combined alliance armada finally breached the inner defenses of Delvani Prime, they found not a mighty, unified fleet ready for a last stand, but a pitiful, fractured remnant, ships damaged and unrepaired, crews starving and divided. Factions within the Navy were actually firing on each other over the last scraps of supplies. The human Supreme Admiral hailed the Imperial flagship. He did not issue threats or demands for surrender. He simply opened a channel and displayed the sheer, overwhelming scale of the armada surrounding their homeworld. Thousands of ships of 100 different designs, united under one banner. He then displayed real-time feeds from across the former empire, liberated world celebrating, Delvani administrators being peacefully deposed, the machinery of tyranny being dismantled. The remaining Delvani commanders surrendered. There was no final, glorious battle, just a silent, humiliating powering down of weapons. The war was over. The Delvani Imperium was finished. And then, the humans did something that terrified the galaxy more than any fleet ever could. They sheathed their weapons and unleashed their lawyers. It was not a joke. It was a systematic, terrifyingly calm process. They arrested the Emperor, every member of the High Senate, every planetary governor, every sector commander, every lash holder who had ever authored an oppressive decree. They dragged them, not to execution chambers, but to courtrooms, specially constructed interstellar courtrooms. What followed were the trials of restoration. They were not show trials. They were painstakingly, agonizingly fair. Evidence was presented. Defense attorneys were provided, often the best in the galaxy, hired at human expense. The accused were allowed to speak, to call witnesses, to contest the charges. It went on for years. The old emperor, accustomed to issuing death sentences with a wave of his hand, died of natural causes, of sheer age infirmity, while awaiting the verdict on his 317 count of crimes against sentience. His successor, a younger, lesser heir, was forced to sign the Galactic Restitution Accords. The Empire was legally dissolved, its assets seized and redistributed to its victims. The Delvani were confined to a handful of pre-warp systems in the remote southern arm, demilitarized and placed under observation. They were not exterminated. They were adjudicated into irrelevance. Many in the galaxy waited, holding their breath. Surely, they thought, this was a prelude to a new human empire. They had the fleet. They had the moral authority. They had the will. Within a standard year of the final verdict, the humans did the unthinkable. They stood down. They dismantled over half of their formidable war fleet. The remaining ships were donated to a new, multi-species galactic peacekeeping corps, tasked with hunting pirates and mediating disputes. The humans took a leading role in the reformed Galactic Council, yes, but they did not seize control. They earned the head chair through a rotating election, and they have held it fairly ever since, known for a frustrating, unshakable adherence to due process and equitable treatment. They showed my guild a mercy we did not deserve. They understood we had broken our contract with the Delvani when we refused their final call. They allowed us to live, but they forced us to disband. The name Blackhand was permanently retired. We were once the foremost assassins in the galaxy. They reduced us to a third of our number before they even left their home planet. We are now just individuals, shadows with no guild to call home. So, you see, we do not kill humans. You kill one human. Their immediate family will dedicate their lives to finding you. You kill the human's family. Their entire extended clan, their friends, their nation will take up the cause. You make it a species-wide matter, and you will have collective focus of the most stubborn, resourceful, and vengeful civilization in known space upon your head. And you had better pray that when they find you, they are in a merciful mood and simply kill you. Because if their legal system gets you first, you will sit in a cell. You will have a fair trial. You will be assigned a defender. And you will be found guilty with the full, transparent weight of galactic law behind the verdict. Your assets will be forfeit to the victim's lineage. Your name will be recorded in history as a cautionary footnote, and you will spend the rest of your natural life in a clean, humane rehabilitation facility, contemplating the precise series of decisions that led you there. It is a fate far worse than death for beings like us. Now, I have shared this history at great personal cost. So I will ask once, and only out of morbid curiosity, what did this human do to you? What offense could possibly warrant such a suicidal obsession? They insulted my broodmate in a public forum. They questioned her artistic integrity. It was a deep cultural slight. The assassin stared for a long, silent moment. Then he let out a sound, a dry, rattling, wheezing sound that was the closest a species ever came to laughter. That is all? An insult? A critique of artistry? It was a grievous offense to our hive pride. Then insult them back. Compose a scathing poem. Create a painting that satirizes their poor taste. If you must have physical satisfaction, walk up to them and punch them in the face. I assure you, you will break your hand on their jawbone before you knock them over. But the gesture might be satisfying. But a killing contract? You are not just stepping over a line. You are attempting to vault across a galactic rift. You said we don't kill humans. But there must be a way. There is. The way is not to try. Those chaotic, brilliant, infuriating apes adore conflict. They thrive on it, but they channel it. They have arenas for physical combat. They call them sports. They have forums for verbal and intellectual combat, debates, critiques, roasts. Engage them there. Challenge them to a duel of wits. You will probably lose, but you will survive the experience. And if you approach them afterward, explain calmly how their words wounded your broodmate's honor. There is a non-zero chance they will apologize. Sincerely, they have a complex, infuriating concept called sportsmanship and fair play. They would do that? Apologize for a victory? They are monsters on the battlefield. They are demons from the abyss when they have been truly wronged. But in times of peace, they are not uncivilized. If they were, they could never have rebuilt the Galactic Council into a functioning body. They hold the head chair not through fear, but through respected, if often frustrating, fairness. They are a firm species, unyielding on principles. But they are just. The assassin drained the last few drops from his glass, the viscous liquid catching the dim light. He placed the empty vessel on the table with a definitive click. My cup is empty. The history lesson is concluded, unless you intend to purchase another round and continue this educational session. I believe our business, or lack thereof, is concluded. You have your answer. Take it, leave, and if you are wise, you will never speak of this desire again, not even in your private thoughts. The universe has ears.